Welcome to Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. I'm Melie, and this is the podcast for people who are determined to find a glimmer of hope even while the fires of life are burning around them. Together, we'll dumpster dive through all sorts of topics like divorce, dating, friendships, grief, career ups and downs, and so much more. All with a sense of humor and absolutely no toxic positivity. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. Today's episode is Wearing Your Heart on Your Sleeve, the Blessing and the Battle. Today we're going to dive into a phrase you've probably heard a million times. Wear your heart on your sleeve. And if you're the kind of person who tears up during insurance commercials or who maybe overthinks a text message for like 3 hours, this episode is probably for you. So let's talk about what it really means to be an open-hearted human in a world that sometimes treats emotions like a liability. So where did this phrase even come from? If you're someone, who's been told you're somebody who wears your heart on your sleeve, it's just sort of become commonplace, right? We hear that term and it just makes sense to us. But what is the origin of that term? Well, it's Shakespeare. That guy really had a flair for the dramatic. This particular line comes from the play Othello. So if you remember that play, or even if you don't, I'll just break it down for you. So there's this character, Iago, and he's something of a sociopath, to be honest. But he says in one part of the play, "I will wear my heart upon my sleeve for daws to peck at." And the translation of that is, I'm about to be so honest it hurts, and probably I'll get torn apart for it. So this saying, even though it was from this evil character, has really stuck. The idea of wearing your heart on your sleeve means letting people see how you really feel. It's all about not hiding your emotions, not putting on a mask, not pretending that you're fine when you're anything but, which it sounds kind of beautiful, right? Until someone calls you too sensitive or says you're too emotional or accuses you of being, dun-dun-dun, dramatic. Been there? Yeah, me too. There are times, I will fully admit it, there are times where I can be a bit of a dramatic person. I mean, who hasn't been dramatic at times, right? But I do want to say something here. There is a difference between being dramatic and simply being open about your emotions and feelings. For someone who is emotionally closed off or emotionally unavailable, the emotionally open person can feel dramatic, and they'll often be real quick to tell you you are being dramatic when you share your feelings. But guess whose problem that is? Not the person expressing emotion, assuming that they're doing it in a kind way. I have been called dramatic by dudes from the dating apps for saying that I don't like mixed messages. I have been called dramatic for saying that someone hurt my feelings with their actions. And I have been called dramatic for confessing feelings for someone that I have known and kissed for years, only to be told that he saw me as purely platonic and thought that I knew that. What? All that to say, if you are someone who openly shares your feelings, there is nothing wrong or dramatic about that. In fact, it can be a bit of a blessing, while also sometimes being a little bit of a battle. But let's talk about the upside first, because yes, being an open-hearted person absolutely has its perks. So what are those perks? Well, number one, you probably connect really deeply with others. People probably feel safe with you. Think about it this way. Are you someone who people turn to when they need to talk through something difficult? Are you open about how you feel with others so that they always know where they stand with you and they don't feel like they have to walk on eggshells in your presence? If so, I would say those are really great things. Another blessing from being the kind of person that wears their heart on their sleeve is that you probably don't shy away from love or hard conversations. And I relate to this one so much. So when I love hard and real, and I'm all in. I had someone in my life a couple years ago who had been in my life at that point for a couple of years, and he said to me that my all-in approach to dating him didn't work for him. He had all these rules about what you could say when and how and whatever, and I'm sorry, but after 2 years of talking, I was clear about what I wanted, and I will always be clear in that way. And sometimes, well, a lot of the time lately, I get hurt because of it. But I won't stop being vulnerable just because there are those people out there who will take advantage of it or who will reject it. In fact, C.S. Lewis has a quote that I absolutely love, and I think it's so applicable to what we're talking about today, so I'm going to read it for you right now. This is from his book, The Four Loves. He says, "To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable." So wearing your heart on your sleeve, I would say that's an example of love. Also, as I mentioned, if you are someone who wears your heart on your sleeve, you're probably also open to having hard conversations, or I guess I should say maybe more open than somebody who doesn't. While I don't cherish hard conversations like I do conversations about love, they are important and I will have them with people. I may be bawling my eyes out while I do it, but I will still do it. So what's another blessing of wearing your heart on your sleeve? Well, chances are if that's you, you feel life fully. Your highs are really high and you're willing to share that. There is something that is so refreshing about someone who shares when they are truly happy and doesn't hide behind some false sense of just trying to stay cool, or be chill or whatever. Another great benefit of this is you reflect the heart of God, who, by the way, is the most emotionally expressive. Our Lord rejoices. He weeps. He grieves. He gets righteously angry. God doesn't hide how he feels. But with all of these amazing and wonderful blessings that come with being someone who wears your heart on your sleeve, there is also a battle. Let's be honest, sometimes people misunderstand us, right? Or even worse than that, they take advantage of our openness and our honesty and our vulnerability. Sometimes we can be magnets for people who might be labeled as narcissistic or emotionally unavailable. Another piece of that battle is our emotions can sometimes feel like too much for others, sometimes even for ourselves. But if you are someone who expresses your emotions and is really open with them, somebody who maybe, comes from a different dynamic where they were taught to hide their emotions and keep everything bottled up into themselves, can feel like somebody who is sharing all of that can be a little much for them. And if you are somebody who has vulnerability without boundaries, which happens a lot when you are somebody who is really emotionally connected and we want to help everybody and we want to be available and give everybody the benefit of the doubt and share our hearts even when they get trampled on, that can also be a recipe for burnout. And one other one is we often end up in relationships where we're the ones who feel more. We feel like we love more, we hurt more. That can be exhausting. I still think being someone that wears their heart on their sleeve is far and above better than bottling it all up. But let's talk a little bit about what neuroscience has to say about it. So we're going to nerd out for a second because science actually backs up this idea of some people being more emotionally expressive or sensitive than others. Here is what we know. The amygdala, which is your brain's emotion center, tends to be more active in people who feel things deeply. Also, you may have heard of mirror neurons. These are neurons that fire when you see someone else express emotion, which helps you empathize, but it can also make you absorb others' emotions. We also know that people high in emotional sensitivity often have nervous systems that stay on high alert longer. Their brains take in more emotional information and don't let go easily. Raising my hand for this one over here. So, if you've ever wondered, why do I feel things so deeply? Why can't I just brush stuff off like everyone else does? Understand this, you are not weak, not at all. You're just wired differently. And here's the kicker. Research also shows that emotional openness, when paired with self-awareness, builds emotional intelligence, better relationships, and even stronger leadership. So, it is by far a strength, not a flaw. Take that, guys, from the dating apps. Now, let's bring this all back to faith. Somewhere along the line, a lot of us picked up this lie that strong faith means stoicism. That if you really trust God, you won't cry, or at least not in public, or get anxious or feel overwhelmed. But can I remind you, Jesus wept. He didn't just cry a little dignified tear. He wept, which really means ugly cried, over a friend who died, even though he knew resurrection was coming. Let's also talk about David for a minute here. David was the man after God's own heart. David also wrote psalms that sound like emotional roller coasters. There's joy, there's anger, there's despair, and then there's hope, sometimes all in one chapter. Just listen to the first 2 verses of Psalm 13. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long will I store up anxious concerns within me, agony in my mind every day? How long will my enemy dominate me? If that's not an example of someone wearing their heart on their sleeve, I don't know what is. So I will say, during the time when I went through my divorce, I spent a lot of time in the Psalms because they really resonated with me. The language that David uses, the, lack of fear that he has to just be real before God was so needed in that time. And it also kind of gave me permission as I was journaling through that experience to be real before God, to pour out my heart, to not sugarcoat it, to not, try to tie everything up with a fancy bow and make it all look pretty, but instead to just be real and be raw before God. So if you are somebody who is going through something right now and you're struggling to, express yourself, highly recommend read through the Psalms and then get out a journal or just a piece of paper or even just the Notes app on your phone and see what comes out, Say it all. God knows already what you're thinking, what you're feeling, so just get it all out there. God never asks us to numb ourselves. He asks us to bring our full and honest hearts to Him. Psalm 62:8 says, "Trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts before Him. God is our refuge." So, wearing your heart on your sleeve? It's actually one of the most spiritual things you can do. So, if you are someone who wears your heart on your sleeve and you're listening today, I want you to hear this. You are not too much. You are not weak, and you are absolutely not doing it wrong. You are brave, you are beautifully human, and God designed you this way on purpose. But yes, open-hearted doesn't mean boundaryless. Vulnerability without discernment can leave you drained. So here is your gentle reminder. Let people in, but not everyone. When someone shows you that they don't value your openness and your vulnerability, it's time to show them the door, not change who you are. And I say this as somebody who really, really needs to hear it myself. Also, practice emotional honesty with wisdom. So, it's one thing to confess your love for someone that you've been talking to for months or maybe years, even in my case, but it's quite another to declare undying affection right in the middle of a coffee shop for the cute barista you just met just because he looks like your high school crush. That might be a little unwise. Funny? Yes, but maybe not the kind of vulnerability we're aiming for. Your emotions are a gift, but they don't have to be the boss. They were never meant to be in the driver's seat. Think of them more like dashboard lights. They tell you something, but they don't actually steer the car. So before we close, let's talk about what it actually looks like to thrive as someone who wears their heart on their sleeve. Because yes, it absolutely can be beautiful. But let's be honest, it can also feel like emotional whiplash if you don't have the tools to navigate it. So here are a few things that have helped me, and I hope will help you too. Number 1 is know your emotional baseline. When you are someone who feels deeply, it really helps to learn your own patterns. Are you more reactive when you're tired? Do you tend to take on other people's moods? This is where brain science meets self-awareness. The prefrontal cortex, The part of your brain that really helps with regulation and decision-making needs space and rest to function well. Emotional overwhelm often happens when that part of our brains is offline. So don't be afraid to pause and check in with yourself. Is this mine to carry? Number 2, build emotional boundaries. Being open-hearted doesn't mean saying everything to everyone. So you don't have to soft launch your emotional state on Instagram. You don't have to text your ex just because you had a dream about them. Let me tell you right now, that does not get you the results you want. I know that one from experience. You're allowed to feel it all and still choose what you share, when, and with whom. Jesus was incredibly open-hearted, and yet he still chose his inner circle carefully. If the Son of God had boundaries, you're allowed to have some too. Number 3, practice safe vulnerability. Vulnerability is a beautiful thing, just like that quote from C.S. Lewis in the beginning reminded us. But it's best shared with people who have earned your trust. Like, for example, say you're crying in the Target checkout line and telling the cashier about your latest breakup. I get it. I really, really do. But also, maybe instead that would be a moment to call your best friend or your therapist or even share these details with your dog. I'm sure your dog gets it. Safe vulnerability means you honor your emotions and your peace. And 4, let God be your anchor. When your emotions are strong, anchoring in truth is so essential. Not toxic positivity. You know how much I hate that. Not fake smiles, not just saying you're fine for the sake of saying it. Real grounding truth. Like saying things to yourself like, I'm not alone. This hurts right now, but I am held. God sees me, and I don't have to explain myself to be loved. Sometimes you need to feel it fully, and then let God speak peace into the storm. You can be emotionally honest and still wise. You can be soft and still strong. You can be tender-hearted and still resilient as heck. The goal isn't to stop feeling. The goal is to learn how to live from a place where your emotions are integrated, not ignored, not in charge, but honored. Because here's the truth. You were never meant to be numb. You were meant to feel and heal and to keep going. So maybe today, instead of wishing you could just not care so much, you'll choose to honor the way God made your heart. Maybe you'll stop apologizing for crying at that one worship song every single time or tearing up at that commercial that just tugs at your heartstrings. Your sensitivity is sacred. Your openness is courageous. Your tender heart is not a liability. It's a light. Keep shining even when life gets messy. Actually, especially then. So thank you so much for spending part of your day with me here on Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. If this episode hit home, would you share it with someone who needs to hear it? And hey, go easy on your heart this week. It's doing a lot of brave things. Until next time, keep finding the diamonds, even in the dumpster fires. Chat soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll dive into more of life's big topics with a sense of humor and without toxic positivity. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and if you could leave a review, that helps the show reach more people and change more lives. Thank you so much.